Welcome everybody to AFSO21 Radio. You're listening to the Weekend Wrap-Up.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Weekend Wrap-Up here on AFSO21 Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Ferrara. And folks, for this episode, I've invited somebody I consider a friend, a colleague, and veteran alike, firefighter paramedic Jason Kling. And really the reason I wanted to have him on here, and I've been bugging him for a little while, is to highlight his military and civilian experience as a paramedic. Jason has transitioned from the Army over to the civilian side. He's going to talk about that throughout the podcast. And, you know, I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Basically, it's just two guys sitting in our man caves, having a great time talking about, the career field and, issues impacting fire protection emergency services. So stay tuned. In the meantime, let's go ahead and pause for a second to hear from our sponsor, Fire Department Coffee.
Firefighters work long shifts. That's the nature of the job. If your station is like most, coffee is what keeps you going. That's why you should check out Fire Department Coffee. Veteran owned and run by firefighters, Fire Department Coffee offers a wide variety of delicious coffee, including their signature line of spirit-infused coffee, all roasted by hand and delivered right to your door. Even better, 10% of net proceeds from every sale goes to benefit wounded, ill, or injured firefighters and other first responders. And they've got a special deal for the Weekend Wrap-Up listeners. Enter discount code AFSO21, that's AFSO21 at checkout to get 10% off your next order at Fire Department Coffee. FireDepartmentCoffee.com, that's FireDept Coffee.com.
Welcome back, everyone. And as you heard with the Fire Department Coffee, our sponsor, please take advantage of their new spirit-infused coffee club. Their coffee is delicious. I got my cup here at Jason Patton, Firefighter Fenton. So please continue to be our sponsor. So as I said, my special guest is Jason Kling. He is a firefighter paramedic here in central Pennsylvania. So Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So if you could, everybody that listens knows, anytime I have a firefighter, emergency responder on here, the first thing out the box is, introductions and sort of a little bit of background as to how you got into the career field and what led you to where you are today.
So obviously you already introduced me, Jason Kling. I started in 92 as a junior volunteer at Watsontown Fire Department, or formerly West Branch Volunteer Fire Department in Watsontown, which has been changed to the Warrior Run Area Fire Department after we merged four firehouses together. Since then, as soon as I could, I for whatever reason, I became an EMT, which has been obviously my calling. I took that along with me to the military, and that had been my career for 23 years in the military, as a ground medic to a flight medic to the platoon sergeant for a medical detachment. Along with that, progressed into the military, sent me to paramedic school down in Fort Sam in San Antonio, Texas. So, and then I started working for right out of the box from a brand new shiny paramedic. And I am now the B platoon captain on day shift there.
Nice. Well, first and foremost, thanks for your service. A lot of our listeners here in the Weekend Wrap-Up are military, or, they're either current or retirees, veterans like myself. So if you could, I heard you say, with your military background, could you talk a little bit about, what you did? If, I don't think you did any secret squirrel stuff, but, if you did, don't talk about it. But
no.
Yeah, you could just, let the listeners know, the audience know, what you did.
I started my career in the military right out of high school. I was not a I did not have the mindset of going to college. So I enlisted active duty, went through Fort Knox, Kentucky, 16 miserable weeks there, which, if you didn't know this, you can get up to a foot of snow in Kentucky. So learned that the hard way.
Did not know that.
Tent. And then as soon as I graduated, I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, where you need a baseball bat to kill the mosquitoes that are down there. So I was actually, when I first came into the military, I wasn't even in the medical field. I was a Cav Scout, but my platoon sergeant discovered my background as a fireman, EMS provider, which I got put through a hybrid, if you will, for being in the 90s medical class, and I became the platoon's medic, which was right before we deployed. That was been my first deployment, and we went to Bosnia for a year and a half. Right after that, I came home, and I spent the next 19 years in the National Guard in Pennsylvania. So that progressed to me coming home and being in a tank battalion in Lewisburg as their medic, one of their medics. That progressed to a buddy of mine becoming a recruiter and gave me some inside information about medevac was coming back to Pennsylvania. And for 15 years, I flew on I started out on Hueys, actually. The state still had Hueys as a medic, which was cool because I took the Hueys to the tail end of Hurricane Katrina for a stateside mission. Flew FEMA and did some medevac missions for them down there. Came home to Blackhawks and been on Blackhawks and Chinooks ever since then. So, and deployed 4 other times overseas with the Blackhawks as flight medic platoon sergeant. And then I ended my career with the old tank battalion that I started out with in Lewisburg to round out my career as their platoon sergeant for the tank battalion medic section.
Cool. That's really awesome that you came full circle. I mean, you started your career here and then you ended, your military career same location. So, I mean, how humbling or how emotional was that, to see, this is where you started, you got your legs there, and then you did a lot of things, in the military, and then to come home, how emotional was that for you?
It was really actually a homecoming. Ironically, when I started at Lewisburg in the tank battalion, a lot of the guys were all there about the same rank that I was, starting out senior E4s, E5s, were brand new leaders. When I came back to that tank battalion, those same guys pretty much, I almost correspondingly progressed as I was progressing, and we all came back as leaders to the same area. So it was like a homecoming. Nice. I had guys that I was an E4 with that were first sergeants and E7s, and it was really neat to come back to them and actually shape the kids, if you will, the way we were shaped, kind of old school, if you will. So
yeah, that's really awesome. And I think a lot of the military listeners, they can relate to that, or aspire to, to be able to do that, for a homecoming. Because, I did 20 years active duty. There's no active duty bases here in Pennsylvania for the Air Force. So I got to get bounced around. I started in Cannon Air Force Base, Clovis, New Mexico, and ended at Langley, which Langley was my first choice. I wanted to go to, when I joined up. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but at least I got to retire out of, where I wanted to go. So I guess that, you could almost say that was sort of a homecoming, in a sense.
You ended on a happy note is what it was.
So you went from military, and then you came back here, in the Guard, and became a civilian paramedic. So, what I think a lot of the military listeners, they get to that point, retirement, transition, blue suiters, green suiters over to the civilian side. How difficult was that for you, the transition? Was it easy? Was it hard? And then, can you share a little bit of how that went?
I have to think that I didn't have any difficulty between my military life and my civilian job, because it was the same thing in essence. I was a medic in the civilian world. I'm a medic in the military. I ride in a vehicle with four wheels versus one with a giant fan on the top of it. I get someplace quicker with the military. I get there as fast as I can with four wheels on the civilian side.
But trust me, folks, I can attest to that. I've ridden with Jason on some ride-alongs. He drives with a purpose. Yeah,
let's let it at that. Let's not throw me under the bus.
Now, within the legal speed limit, but he drives with a purpose, folks.
They put a brush guard in the front of my truck for a reason. Okay. I didn't do a different job. I had more meetings maybe in the military versus what I do in the civilian side, but in essence, I was doing the same thing. I was treating patients. I think that people that are bankers in the civilian world and whatever they are in the military, not being a banker or in the finance division, probably have more of a difficulty. But yeah, for me, I can attest that for me, it's almost seamless.
And that's, you and I know, career fields in the military, my military audience, they're the same. Having a career field to where you can somewhat easily transition over to the civilian side. Not all career fields in the military, you can do that. Fortunately, you and I think a lot of the audience members, firefighters, emergency responders, have been able to do that. So having been on the job, here in central Pennsylvania, as a paramedic, what challenges have you seen within the career field? Obviously, being military, they do things, completely different or almost different, in terms of what civilians do. There's different standards, rules, regulations, and stuff like that. What challenges have you seen or heard of, in the civilian side as a paramedic, that you think needs some attention, if anything?
Challenges as in, there's challenges for people coming out of the military that aren't paramedics, that are medics in the military, but on the civilian side, all that they are qualified to do is be an EMT.
Okay.
However, in the military, they're an EMT, but they're trained with all these extra skill sets, starting IVs, intubation, suturing, stuff like that. When they come to the civilian world and they're on an ambulance, working professionally, working as a volunteer, whichever it is, they have to put the brakes on because they know what needs to be done, but they're not allowed to because their hands are tied.
Okay.
Now, that's slowly changing because some of the credentialing that the military is doing is transitioning into the civilian world. So some of those people are able to come home and not just be an EMT basic, but maybe an advanced EMT, or an EMTI, depending on what state you're in and what they acknowledge as the next level.
Okay.
Some of them are privileged enough that their unit will send them to the Army Paramedic program. And then they come out fully credentialed as a nationally registered paramedic. And they can go right into being a job as a paramedic.
Okay.
I can tell you that until I became a paramedic as an Army medic working as an EMT, it was very challenging because I could sit there and watch my medic partner struggle with certain things and be like, well, I can do that, but I wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
And if I had done it, then I was going to get my butt kicked for it.
Yep.
Most likely terminated because I was working outside my scope of practice. Got it.
Fortunately, for the Air Force listeners, they know, they're getting NREMT either at the academy or on station now.
Now they are.
Now they're doing it. For a lot of years, we were in the Air Force. We were EMRs, emergency responders, advanced first aid, CPR, all that. Some individuals had EMT, and then we ran, just as I was retiring, they ran into the protocols, snafu, where Air Force leaders in the medical field said nope, firefighters couldn't be EMTs because they didn't recognize firefighters as EMT. They weren't in the medical field. So throughout my career, I've watched, especially with guard personnel that would come in, we'd see paramedics and they jump on the truck, but they for a lack of better term, they had to dumb themselves down and be an EMR or an EMT if they were allowed to function in that. And a lot of them got frustrated. I noticed that here you have a paramedic, and they see what needs to be done, but like you said, their hands were tied, and it was frustrating. So I think that along with some other initiatives and a lot of push from fire leadership in the Air Force, thankfully they got us. They got Air Force guys up to EMTs. Will they ever go to paramedic? I doubt it. But who knows? Who knows? So COVID, everybody's talking about COVID. So, what experiences have you had with COVID in terms of being able to do your job? What barriers or anything like that? Because before COVID hit, we weren't seeing the masks, we weren't seeing the gowns, the restrictions, and then COVID hit, and then all of that fell into place, and now we're sort of at the tail end of it. We're coming out of it, but during that period, what have you seen or encountered that may have limited or hindered your ability to do what you did normally?
Wow, that is a loaded. That is quite the loaded question.
Yeah.
COVID, before COVID, I don't want to say that you were carefree, but you were not as cautious. You always had cautions in your mind,
right.
Is it the flu? Is it, something? But obviously we weren't wearing, like you said, we weren't wearing masks every day. We weren't, we had a policy that we had a 6-foot assessment at first, and if our assessment determined that they were COVID hot, then we increased our PPE level. So we went from, when COVID started, it was guaranteed eye protection, a surgical mask, and gloves. If I determined that someone was COVID hot, then we increased that to N95s. Right at not long, I can't even put a time frame on it. We got PAPRs on all the trucks, so which made life extremely well. for the providers, because I didn't have that mask sucked fast in my face. I had a hood on my face. People actually could see me and actually see what I looked like and was actually talking to them. It was more comfortable, with the PAPRs. The PAPRs have been the godsend, actually, since this whole COVID thing has broke out. Deconning, a normal, I'll call it a routine ambulance call, but nothing's ever routine, as you know.
Right.
A routine ambulance call before COVID would take you 45 minutes to an hour to turn around and be available again. During COVID, sometimes you're looking at 2.5 hours until you got done deconning everything. Maybe you even had to be cleaned up yourself, different uniform, whatnot. So I'm glad to see that the end is near. I think the light is at the end of the tunnel, finally.
Yeah.
But yeah, COVID, whew, and if I may say, I am so sick and tired of hearing the excuse, COVID this and COVID that. COVID's the reason for something being delayed or not getting done, or it's over,
Yeah.
Go back to work. Yep. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's fortunately, I think, we're at the end of the tunnel. We've seen the light. I think we're getting out of that. We'll see with these vaccines and everything, and that's another thing that a lot of the listeners in the DoD, with the vaccines, many of them being experimental. It's interesting to see and hear that not all the military has taken the vaccines. Even here in Pennsylvania, even in the county that I'm in. A very small percentage has gotten the vaccines.
I can't emphasize it. I mean, I got it, my whole family has gotten it. I can't emphasize enough to get it. If it helps put this thing to bed and us move on from it, then get the thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
I'm not advertising for anybody, but if it helps us out, then let's move on.
Yeah. Yep. No, absolutely. So one of the things, I'm big on is training. Now, obviously you're in a career organization. You're offered training, throughout your career, professional development and everything. What have you seen? Because I think you work with a lot of volunteer organizations as well. So what have you seen that is, I guess, currently exists in what needs to exist in terms of training certification for the volunteer service? Those that, because like where I'm at, we have a lot of volunteer organizations here, but we're, a lot of them they're not a QRS, they're not first due for medical or anything like that. So they get the basic, the CPR, some first aid. Myself, I'm finishing up the EMT course. So
yes, I believe your test is in like a week, isn't it?
Next Wednesday or Tuesday.
Yeah,
next Tuesday, the 1st. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully let's knock on wood on that. So
you'll be fine.
I hope so. But yeah, for training wise, what do you think there needs to be? And and I'm looking at, firefighters, as well as, let's look at our law enforcement officers out there, because they're considered first responders as well. So, a lot of times I've seen them show up on scene, and some of them are a little hesitant to go in. So should they be trained to like an EMR level, or what are your thoughts on that?
So back around to the police thing real quick. I think that hesitation in going in has significantly increased because of COVID. I can tell you that where I work, we have normally a police officer with us all the time. Prior to COVID, at the height of, if you want to call the peak of COVID, we knew they were there. We knew they were in the area because we could hear them on the radio, and they would say, if they need us, we're right here. But they weren't helping. They weren't, and I don't take this wrong. They weren't carrying a bag inside with us like they used to, stuff like that, because of COVID, and they didn't want to get exposed and take it back to their departments. And everybody understood that. Everybody was understanding about that. Now you can see kind of COVID, with COVID relaxing a little bit, there's a little bit more presence. People, officers are starting to go inside with us. I don't blame them one bit at all. If I was in their shoes, I'd be doing the same thing. I think on the EMS side, there needs to be some kind of standardization. Some things, we've had some hiccups, if you will, because obviously, if you want to stay on the police thing, policing has been a highlight, obviously, in the country of lately, and it is not something they don't want to. If I say expose themselves, I don't know that that's the proper term. They have to be cautious as to what they're doing and how much they're helping us, or what they're getting involved in with us. If you look at the EMT book, as you have just went through, if you don't know what to do or you have a questionable thing, what's the first thing they tell you to do? Call the police.
Yeah.
Well, the police get there and they're like, well, it's not our problem. So you're kind of between a rock and a hard place now. So some things need to be updated, obviously, on both ends, the police side and the EMS side, in the teachings. I believe that's my personal opinion. The first responders, departments that don't run EMS, there should be some kind of standardized training. What that is, take them to a level of EMR, I think would be appropriate. But then you have to ask, where's the funding coming from?
Right.
How do I fund everybody to go to that class? I think that EMS agencies in your county, my county, the county I work in, etc., can those EMS agencies or departments that do EMS, can they help educate those other guys that don't? Yes, somehow. But again, there's going to always be the $sign question. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there a really solid answer to answer that question of yours? No. Some kind of standardized training, though, is what needs to be done.
And the big thing that I've noticed, I mean, in the military, we always did a needs assessment. It's every installation was different. You have your core mission essential functions, if you will. If you were had a runway, you get your airport firefighter, firefighter 1, firefighter 2, all that stuff. And then depending on what was going on within your location, then you built upon that. And I think, we almost have to, I mean, we're here in rural central Pennsylvania. And I think, having more basic trained, emergency responders out there, like you said, the EMR, something to where we can call upon them, they can get out on scene and lend a hand, because manpower is essential around here. That's the big thing. I hear calls all the time, EMS calling for lifting assist or manpower. A call comes in and then it goes south, and then we're waiting on fire to get dispatched. If they were dispatched initially, would that help? Maybe, I would think it would.
You would hope it would.
Yeah. Yep. So the military, before I retired, talking about the police and everything, the military, the Air Force started incorporating this EMS with the security forces or SWAT teams, and we're seeing it in civilian communities now. Do you is that a good thing, or should it be law enforcement, fire, EMS all stay in their own swim lanes?
So I know why you got that question. I know where that came from, because you know that one of my extra duties for work is part of the tactical team's medic.
Yeah.
So yes, that's near and dear to my heart. That I wholeheartedly support it 110%. Yes, the guys need to be taken care of, that are kicking indoors, that are standing on the perimeters. They need to be taken care of. But also the bad person, they need to be taken care of too if they get really stupid.
Yeah. Yep.
So yes, and is there a ambulance stage someplace when stuff like that's happening? Yes, sometimes several blocks away. Sometimes they're just told to stay in their quarters, but you're supporting them, and that you don't know how far away that is. So yes, EMS is wholeheartedly needs to be integrated with the police, and with the way things have been going in society, the world.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. EMS definitely needs to be integrated along with the police because they need taken care of.
But should in the Air Force, when they first implemented it, there was a lot of pushback to where they were tasking firefighters to EMS trained firefighters to be that last guy, that anchor guy on that team that went inside. Should firefighters EMS be in that, be stacked up at the door with those tactical teams, or should law enforcement be trained EMTs, paramedics?
No, I know that different agencies do different things.
Okay.
Our area, let's use our area because I'm knowledgeable in that fact.
Sure.
We take trained paramedics, embed them with the tactical teams, train them to the tactical team standards and levels, and that's where they are. They're stacked up with that tactical team. They are kept, we'll call it an arm's length away from the immediate danger, but they're right there that they can have an immediate presence. In large scale incidents, a school shooting or a business shooting or something like that, we have protocols in place that allow firefighters and EMS personnel to be stacked up ready at a safe distance as rescue task force to go in. And after an area is cleared and deemed cold, if you want to do the hazmat thing, the cold, warm, hot zone, in the cold zone, those rescue task forces are going in, scooping up the patients, getting them out of there after the tactical medic has intervened some way, whether it is just tagging them and saying, hey, this person is a green, they can be walked out, or a tourniquet was put on, now they're from a red to a yellow, or whatever the tactical medics have done. Now those rescue task forces can come in at a safer time to get them out. those task forces, those rescue task forces, are not going into the warm and hot zones. That's where the tactical medics that are trained are going to end up being.
Okay.
Does that
Cool.
answer make sense?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like I said, there's when the Air Force did it, I mean, I think they've got all the bugs worked out of it now. When it first came out, like I said, there was a lot of fire chiefs. They're like, oh hell no, I'm not putting my firefighters in danger. And there was young firefighters. I mean, they were lined up. They were raising their hand. They're like, heck yeah, I want to do this. Now, I think some of it came because they were bored at the fire station. Firefighters in the Air Force and the military, we don't they didn't get very much calls, so they wanted a little extra something.
Well, no, everything's block and mortar.
Yeah. Yep. Seriously, I mean,
unless they're out putting out a range fire.
Yeah. Yep. Nellis has been busy. Unfortunately, they had an aircraft go down out there with a fire. Yeah, with a fatality on the pilot. Off base, but again, things like that. They're rare. They happen. The Nellis Air Force Base guys, Las Vegas guys, did a great job out there. But it's just there's few and far between calls. So military firefighters are always looking for something, and I think that's going to help. Like we talked about earlier, with that that career transition. They get that under their belt. They get that experience. Then they can bring that into the civilian side, like you did. You brought all that wealth of experience into the civilian side, and it was an easy transition for you. So I think that the DoD is leading or taking some initiative. Their leaders are seeing that. How do we transition our personnel and make them effective members of society, not just because unfortunately, like I said, some career fields, you're not going to. Yeah, if you got management skills, business or leadership skills like that transitions. But if you're a bomb loader, how often does that transition?
Right.
Or
in the Army, a tank driver. I mean,
well,
you could be a bulldoze driver operator, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing, sort of.
Yep.
One just has a gun on the end of it.
So I always talk about, legislation, topics that are out there. And do you see, or do you, if you could say something to legislators that may be listening, whether it's local, state, federal, do you have anything you would want to say to them that they're working on or they should be working on for the betterment of the career field, whether it be fire, EMS, police, for first responders? Without starting a firestorm.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I'd like to say. Can we move on to that different subject? Because I don't know that I can say anything that is not going to create a firestorm and or pin me against the wall for something.
Okay. Yep. No, we
I'm
don't want
not
to.
trying to avoid that question, but I'm trying to not create a firestorm.
Yep. No, I don't want to put you in a pickle. So for me, my listeners, my audience knows I don't hold anything back with legislators. I've been down to Congress before, and dealt with some stuff because, for me, when it comes to, emergency responder safety, if legislators aren't putting that as a priority, especially with toxic chemical exposure, PFAS, firefighting foam, stuff like that, I'm in a politician's face, dealing with that. So, and next week, I'm actually discussing some legislation that's named after Mike Lesick, who was a firefighter down in Virginia, unfortunately passed away due to cancer. So I'm getting involved in some of that legislation that's going to hopefully protect firefighters. So, other topics. Like I said, before we started recording, I don't know. It's all good, brother. It's all good. So, yeah, I don't have a script. So, what do you want to say? What what do you want to get off your chest that's not going to get you ripped? Not anything like that. What words of advice do you have for the audience out there? If they're, for that young individual, whether they're a volunteer, somebody looking to pursue in a career department, because you go on social media, I mean, there's departments hiring left and right out there.
I just posted one for my area that's hiring. Actually, two areas in my area, or two departments in my area that are hiring.
Okay.
And that's fire.
Yeah.
My own parent employer is hiring.
Okay.
Anybody that has my social media will see the advertisement for that. It is a career field that is in dire need on the professional side. It is a extreme dire need on the volunteer side. Volunteers are few and far between anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
I see it firsthand in our own department here, where I volunteer at. If there's anything that I would put out to somebody that's coming brand new, spanking, coming into the career field, whether it's EMS or fire, do your own thing. Do your thing, I should say. One of my biggest pet peeves is clicks within the service.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I can't stand it. I hate it. If there's anything, to me, that is a cancer in the service. That's just how I feel about it. I don't get into them. Don't get into the whole. I'm not saying don't have friends,
right.
But right. Don't get into those clicky things. But it happens.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a terrible thing in the service, and that's probably one of the biggest things that if I have ever heard any department talking to different members, that's what will divide a department in half in a hurry.
Yep.
A lot of guys or girls, guys and girls, join the fire department, and then they see the EMS side, and they're told, "Oh, you don't want to go over there and do that kind of stuff. That's for the losers. That's for the guys that can't handle this." I'm walking, talking, breathing proof that you can do both sides.
Yep.
Do what your heart is wants, and in the fire service, if it wants EMS, if it wants both, then do it. That's I can't say that I'm unhappy with doing what I love, and I work as a career in EMS, and I volunteer on the fire side, and every once in a while I volunteer on the EMS side too, but
yep.
I'm fortunate enough, my fire department has a career EMS service in it, so I don't have to do much of it.
And as I've talked about that before, with mentorship. I think that's in a career field, in a career departments, we see some mentorship there. Volunteer departments, not so much, because some folks they show up, some folks they don't. I talked to Tom Cook, the PA State Fire Academy administrator, last episode. We talked a little bit about that. How do we incentivize, especially volunteers, to not only get into the department, into the organization, but then stay. We've seen a lot of folks, they get in, they get that initial training, and then they move on somewhere else. Or they just stop, or if they don't get the training, or have a reason to come by, they stop coming around. So, I think we're at like 30-some thousand, volunteers here in PA. Before, we were into hundreds of thousands, decades ago. We're trying to get back to that. It's tough because, like And you're absolutely right. I've heard that same thing, to where, firefighters, they ridicule, the EMS. It's always the firefighter versus cop, firefighter versus medic. That back and forth. They'd be like, oh yeah, they didn't cut it, so they go over there because EMS is easy and everything.
No,
it's it's not. It's not. It's so.
I'd have to say that the area in which I work in is doing a pretty good job of enticing younger folks to get into the volunteer service. The department that my truck particularly runs out of has a live-in program.
Yep.
And
yep.
I mean, for an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid going to college, your rent is free. Your payment is to run calls in the middle of the night.
Yep.
And you get the amenities of the firehouse, pretty much anything you want at the fingertips, all the training in the world. The younger folks need to take advantage of that and do that kind of stuff. And it would help both sides. They save money, they get to go to college, and the volunteers get, or the fire department gets more volunteers.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We gotta, I think enterprise-wide, emergency services, they have to think outside the box, because things that were working years ago aren't working today. Obviously the generation has changed, just like in regular business. I mean, business, their models are changing to fit their employees, and it's the millennial generation. It's a totally different generation than it was when you and I started, in our careers. So it's, and that's the other thing too, is that, with, the old salts, the old folks like us. I mean, we're still young, but
I was gonna say, careful who you're calling old there.
So, but the more seasoned individuals, we have plenty to offer, but at the same time, I've seen a lot of the more seasoned folks reluctant to change, and I think that we, as a whole, we all got to work together and think beyond ourselves. That was a big thing in the military. It's we always heard the young kids, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Well, it's not about you. Yeah, there's professional development and blah blah blah, but you got to look at the bigger picture. Who do we serve? We serve the community. That's our customers. We don't serve ourselves. We serve the customers. So how can we better ourselves as a whole? Fire, police, EMS has have to work together. So let me ask you that. We've seen organizations, communities across the country, and the Air Force was mulling over this concept, is incorporating, under one roof, fire, EMS, emergency management, EOD, all of these first responder organizations. They're thinking, they're proposing putting them all in one location, centralized location. Do you think that's a good thing, or should we each have our own individuality? Because tradition, pride, all that, we don't want people, taking that away. That was a big thing, is that, if we join, then we lose all of this tradition. Well, and for me personally, you create new traditions. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
I think times have changed. If you'd asked me that 15, 20 years ago, I would have said, absolutely not. We need our own house and we need to be separated, and I don't want to be in the same place. But now, knowing and seeing how things are, we all need to be under one roof.
Okay.
I don't think that it needs to be commanded by one person.
Right.
But we need to all be together and work together and learn from each other. Because using the concept of what you just said, EOD, fire, EMS, regular police, you know, EOD is going to learn something from us, from EMS and from fire, and fire and EMS is going to learn something from the EOD guys that they can all take a part of and be like, hey, we know that they want to do it this way, and we'll do it this way to help them out. And before, it was everybody's show because nobody wanted to give in, and everybody had to have a piece of the pie.
Yep.
So yeah, I really truly do believe that nowadays, the way things are going and the way things are progressing, we all need to be under one house.
Cool. So I gotta ask you, what's up with the goats?
Oh dear God!
I'm gonna those that know Jason and have been following him on social media.
You brought that up. I get to have a beer.
There you go.
Thanks, pal. My wife is infatuated with goats. I don't know why. She loves them. She likes them. She just thinks they're the world's neatest thing besides the 3 dogs that we have. Coworker of mine, his mom has had these goats. Her and her significant other are getting ready to start traveling once they retire, and they need taken care of. They are almost worse than taking care of a dog. In fact, my 3 dogs, I just keep the bowls full and they're happy, but these guys need fed on a regular schedule. So knowing my wife wanted goats, I surprised her with them while she was at a school. And it was a long 8 hours of busting my ass to set up the pen and move everything. And thank God the previous owners helped out. And of course, like you said, if you saw that on social media, you know what her reaction was.
That's awesome. And yeah, folks, you've got to see the video. I mean, Jason walked his wife out. She was blindfolded. I've never seen anybody get so excited over goats. It was awesome. It was funny. It was hilarious. But yeah, he denies it, folks. He's the goat farmer.
Yeah, I guess
he'll deny it. He's like, oh hell no. Last time I talked to him about it, he was like, nope.
I don't have any part in these things. My wife takes care of them, and now that my daughter's home from college, she's been going out and taking care of them, and she vowed she'd never even go out and see them. So I'm really off the hook. I'm just a good guy that went and got them. That's all.
All right. So, hey, brother, this has been an awesome episode. As always, I give my guests the final word. Anything you want to leave the audience with, words of wisdom, encouragement. I think we did that throughout the episode, but I always like to give the guest, a final opportunity here.
Nah, I mean, and I'm not an advertiser. I don't advertise for anybody or anything like that. But I've got to tell you that since this whole COVID thing, anybody that's out there listening, no matter where they're at, buy small, from the small people, the businesses, support them because Lord knows that they need it. Get vaccinated. If anybody's on the fence, for the love of God, just so we can get rid of this thing. I don't have any hair, and that is not because of the vaccine. I choose to not have hair, so it really hasn't affected me that I'm aware of. What's your name? Oh, no, that's right. Seriously, get vaccinated, buy from the small businesses and support them. And if you know of anybody that even has an inkling of wanting to volunteer, or even get into the career field of this, start hooking them up, because we all need the volunteers and we need it in the career field as well.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, it's that's the big thing. Up here where I'm at, small business, like you said. I mean, they took the brunt of this with the restrictions. The big boxes, we knew they were going to survive, but we've seen small businesses flounder and had to close their doors. So yeah, definitely like Jason said, support them. So. Well, brother, that's going to do it. Like I said, I mean, this has been an awesome interview. Glad to have you two guys, sexy ball-headed guys, just sitting in their man caves, having a chat, talking about what they love to do. So,
hey, like I said, I'm in the he shed instead of, the
he shed.
So,
oh, burn your man card for saying that, dude.
I can't help it. It's my only place of peace and quiet, and when it's raining, it's the only place I can smoke my cigar. That's
a man cave. Never say he shed again.
Whatever. The shop.
The shop. There you go. The shop. I like
there
that.
You go. The shop.
All right, folks. That's going to do it for this episode here in the Weekend Wrap-Up. You've been listening to Jason Kling, firefighter, paramedic, great friend, fellow veteran. I'm Kevin Ferrara. So as always, keep drinking fire department coffee. That's our sponsor. There it is, Jason Patton, firefighter Fenton. I've got my mug. And keep supporting your local fire emergency services. Stay safe, folks. So until next time, that's going to do it for this episode. Keep listening for a few words from our parent company, AFSO21. So until next time, I'm out of here.
Veteran-owned and operated AFSO21 Agile Fire Service Organization for the 21st century applies their extensive background in fire protection and emergency services to deliver support with identifying, developing, implementing, and maintaining strategies and techniques essential to operate and sustain an emergency response organization. AFSO21 services include staffing analysis, risk assessment, standards of cover, training, management, and financial reviews. AFSO21 is prepared to support your organization with increasing your capabilities values. For more information, please go to AFSO21.com. That's AFSO21.com.